Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome all of you back to Ohio Exopolitics. I'm your host, Mark Snyder. We're going to be talking a little bit about overpopulation today, and I'm going to discuss some things described in the Meyer material that talk about something called the third millennium. I'm also going to talk about the impulses, what these impulses from the storage banks are, and I'm going to talk a little about the human spirit, creation, and I'm going to read some interesting elements from a book called Killing Us Softly, The Global Depopulation Policy. And it's written by Kevin Galilee, who really is a person that very adequately describes the overpopulation problem on the earth. He's kind of like Frosty Woolridge for that matter. And let me bring Eve on. I think Eve is going to join me this afternoon, and Nate is going to also call in, hopefully here in a minute or two. Eve, how are you this afternoon?
Oh, I'm very well this morning.
We're in the process of getting 10 inches of snow on top of the snow that we already have.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. I tell you what, every morning when I wake up and I think about the Meyer material and I think about the prophecies and I think about how I'm watching them being fulfilled, it's very humbling and it's a little disturbing at the same time. You guys out on the West Coast, and hopefully Nate will call in here in a second, feel the crunch of overpopulation maybe more than we do here in Ohio.
Yes.
But we are seeing the turmoil, or how can I put this? We are seeing the destruction to the natural world, which is resulting in these extremes in weather. So we're seeing different aspects of this same information, and it manifests differently, I guess.
Well, out here we're having this really dreary, overcast, very kind of cold weather this week. The week before it was in the 90s, and the week before it rained like crazy.
That's so bizarre. And so you're not having the droughts anymore right now?
Oh no, we're still into drought. Just because we had that little bit of rain, it's going to take years to bail out of the drought we have.
Wow. And it's because the aquifers are depleted, I guess.
That and, yeah, well, it's just basically, no rain for a long time.
Plus a very high population.
Yeah, and a lot of water. Some of the water is being fracked and poisoned, especially in the area where they're growing food.
Isn't it crazy that they're doing that in Ohio, too? Mm-hmm. Isn't that just absolutely astonishing that here we're fracking? You know, every fracking well requires 8 to 9 million gallons of fracking fluid. And they make the frack fluid out of water. They just take water, 8 to 9 million gallons of water, put about 600 chemicals in there, and then they flush it down into these areas that they drill. And the drill somehow has a mechanism on it that causes these explosions. And through the explosions on that drill, it's almost like a military thing. Through the explosions, it breaks through the shale. And maybe the fracking fluid flushes the shale out so then they can get to the natural gas. I'm not sure about how all of it works. But it leads to earthquakes.
Yes.
Yeah, earthquakes, besides polluting all that water.
You're going to see a lot more earthquakes back there, that's for sure.
Yeah. I think I may have gotten a little contact from somebody, from Nate. Perhaps, let me see if he's going to call in. Yeah. Looks like Nate's going to call in. That's good. So, what's the temperature right there where you're living?
Well, right now it's just overcast and very dreary. In kind of that dreary coastal marine foggy air, so it's kind of cold. I mean, it's nowhere even close to what you're experiencing, but this is more conducive to summertime weather.
70 degrees, 60 degrees?
Oh, I don't know. I could go out and look.
Okay.
Hold on just a second. Take me 1 minute.
Nate is trying to call me on Skype. He must have forgot. Anyway, I want to kind of get rolling with the show here.
Okay, it's just a little over 60 right now. 10
That's
o'clock
kind of nice. That's better than a blizzard. Now, you haven't been back out to Munns Park since last year, right?
No, I haven't, and I'm kind of shooting for April.
Okay. All righty. Well, I'm going to dive into the show here. I know Nate's trying to call in. He accidentally called me on Skype. And while we're chatting here, chit-chatting, this evening on Revolution Radio, I have Brian Toohey, who is he's a guy kind of like a sports writer who is watching the tremendous amount of gambling that's going on in professional sports and in the corruption in professional sports. And then for hour two, I have a guy who just calls himself Lionel, and he's from LionelMedia.com, and we will be talking about a whole host of things, from 9/11 to the Boston bombing to Sandy Hook, and we'll get his take, particularly on propaganda. He's very much a person that describes the propaganda that is going on with the mainstream media. So Nate is trying to call in with Google Talk, so we'll get him here. Sorry for the slow start. I have a lot of material to cover this afternoon, and it's very strange the way I get on these areas of study with the Meyer information. It's very much a learning experience for me in more ways than one. Billy has a book, it's called The Goblet of Truth, and one of the phrases that he repeats over and over again in The Goblet of Truth is something called the effective truth. And I'll read this passage here. It says, the effective truth stands for the life-giving energy and for life itself, as is predefined in the womb of creational laws and recommendations. Life-affirming creational energy links human beings directly to the laws and recommendations of the comprehensive creation, and its power fills the entire earth and universe. This is the same energy that wants to achieve harmonious concord with all life, with human beings, the planet, and the universe. Now, let me describe my terms there a little bit. When something is effective, it is said to be successful in producing a desired or intended result. Truth is most often used to mean something that's in accord with fact or reality. And this passage says the effective truth stands for life-giving energy. This passage states this is the same energy that wants to achieve harmonious concord with all life, with human beings, the planet, and the universe. Concord means agreement between persons, groups, and nations. So the creation is said to want to have agreement with all life. Interestingly, in concord means a stable, harmonious combination of forces, of tones. In other words, for example, a chord that doesn't require resolution. Let me get a little technical here just for a second. And in music theory, when chords progress, we notice certain patterns, like in jazz, 2-5-1, for example. You don't have to know what the heck I'm talking about. I'm getting to a point here. That 5 chord doesn't produce a resolution. In fact, produces a tension. Now, this harmonious concord that the creation is trying to achieve with all life is like a chord that is producing resolution and harmony. Synonyms with concord include harmony, goodwill, friendship. The term harmony derives from the Greek meaning joint, agreement, concord, to fit together, to join. So perhaps this life-giving energy and effective truth wants to join with all life. So I do think I have both of my callers on. So let me bring Eve back, and I will bring Nate back. Nate, welcome.
Hi.
You sound clear.
Oh, good. Trying a different phone this time.
You're doing Google Talk?
No. I guess it doesn't pick up when I call in with Google Talk, which is weird.
Who knows? I mean, there's so many tangents we could get off on here. I have to watch myself. So, are you in Southern California, like Eve?
Yeah. Yeah. I think we're both out here.
So it's about 60 degrees right there now?
I guess. Is that what the temperature is today?
Well, it's up here. I'm on the Central Coast. I'm north of Nate, halfway between LA and San Francisco.
Yeah, it's 63 where I'm at.
So
how's
how
the weather
much?
out there, Mark? 63?
Well, today we're planning to get 10 inches of snow today. We already had, 4 or 5 on the ground. Last weekend, we had about 5 inches of snow come down and gusting, blowing winds around 30, 40 miles an hour. The temperatures were below zero with wind chill for 3 or 4 days this past week. So, unfortunately, it's really what I'm seeing is all these prophecies being fulfilled in so many ways. And I'm reading this book by Kevin Galilee about the world overpopulation and what the global elite in his mind have been trying to do since World War II. And it's entitled Killing Us Softly. So I want to read a few little passages from that. And at the beginning of the show, I started to talk about this term that keeps being repeated in the Meyer material, particularly in the Goblet of Truth. It's called the effective truth. And the effective truth is kind of analogous to the life-giving energy of creation. And it states in the passage that we just looked at that this life-giving energy tries to achieve harmonious concord with all life, with human beings, with the planet, with the universe. So this creational energy is trying to connect with humanity in some way, which I find very interesting. And I draw the analogy to the storage banks and the impulses that we all receive from both the planetary storage banks and the universal storage banks. And when Billy was a very, very young boy, he had these impulses at about 4 years of age. And again, I've told this story many times, he woke up out of his bed in a warm May evening, and he crawled out a lower window, and he sat on a bench that his father built, and he looked up at this beautiful starry sky, and he heard his own voice say, now this is how powerful these impulses are. A 4-year-old boy saying, my life exists because of the love of creation. And since ancient times, I lived among the stars. Now, he said these things before he had any extraterrestrial contact. And he was filled with all these memories from these previous experiences. And it says in this How It All Began writing, it says that he immediately knew the purpose of his life and what he was to do in his life. And it's very interesting. If you go back to what's called the Codex, and there are certain groups, there is a group of human beings that are still on the earth that agreed to stay behind here on the earth. They were originally these Lyrians that came here 389,000 years ago. And they function under this codex. And they have something called destiny impulses. The Bestimmung, it's called in the German, the destiny impulses. And that is what is leading some people over to Switzerland. And one of the people that has the Bestimmung impulses is this lady from Switzerland, Marianne Eulinger, who sometimes sends me very interesting information. And she recently wrote an article, which I have not read yet, that talks about ISIS, and it talks about what's going on with ISIS and what that whole thing is about. I guess this is a big issue right now in Switzerland, and Billy is talking about it in great deal. But I want to go back to these impulses, because we need more people in the world to be sensitive to the impulses that creation is sending them. We have planetary storage banks. We have universal storage banks. We have a storage bank associated with the spiritual teaching. And all this information is open. It's accessible for human beings to make contact with. And it literally says in the Goblet of Truth that the creation is, with its life-giving energy, is trying to make contact with human beings, with plants, with the earth, with everything, with all things. So we need to be sensitive to these impulses. And unfortunately today, I think many people are intentionally numbing themselves, because any thinking human being today that has a functioning neuron in their brain can see that we're on a path of self-destruction. And they may only be aware of it subconsciously. And it's creating a cognitive dissonance in people. And this cognitive dissonance, and a cognitive dissonance is when you have two ideas that are in total disagreement with each other. So in your subconscious, you have a little war going on between these two ideas. And it produces people become very uncomfortable because of this. And they don't know how to resolve it. And some of them just turn to sports. Some of them turn to alcohol. Some of them turn to various kinds of entertainment. Some of them, on the extreme examples, go into drugs. But we're in a society that's in a deep psychological turmoil. And it's interesting. I've had to do my own self-analysis, and the Meyer material always encourages us to do self-analysis, to look at our own thoughts, because our thoughts have tremendous power. And not only that is, we have to treat our thoughts kind of like a garden, and we have to pull out negative, repeating bad thoughts, which can lead to self-destruction. But sometimes we are getting, how can I say, your subconscious is trying to talk to you. And let me lead this back to overpopulation and to the situation we're in today, because I can remember even as a young boy growing up in Cincinnati, where we had, when I was growing up, we still had nice wooded areas where people could connect with nature, and they could connect with trees and living things, and they could escape from the unnatural world around them. Well, these wooded areas slowly went away as I went into a teenager and then in my early 20s. And I felt this deep sense of psychological dread when this was happening. And I didn't know why. I really, really didn't know why. And it's only until now that I've really been able to figure out what was going on there and why I was kind of getting these impulses. And they were really what I think are impulses. What is happening in the world, all over, on this globe that we live on, is our wooded areas, the natural life is being destroyed. And we are trading this for shopping malls, for stores, for office building, for suburbs, for urban areas. And we are literally destroying our forests, which are the moderators of our climate. And that's why we're having this extreme weather. And even as a young boy, I think I felt this without knowing why I felt this way. Now let me just, if I can here, I want to just reconnect with a few points on overpopulation and the overpopulation problem. And this comes from Frosty Wooldridge's book called America on the Brink. Roughly 4 million people are born on the street and die on the street in India every year. Every year, 18 million people starve to death in the world. This is, again, cognitive dissonance. Here's another statistics I can't even imagine. There is a net gain of 9,000 new births per hour over the number of deaths. In Bangladesh, a country the size of Iowa, it has a little country the size of Iowa has a population of 167 million people, which, for example, is more people that live in Russia. My state, which I think is overpopulated, has 11.5 million people. 10 million children die every year from starvation or starvation-related diseases. That's almost the entire population of the state that I live in that dies from starvation and starvation-related diseases. The world population grows by 77 million people annually. Now, here's a little bit of good news, kind of good news in a way. The Western world, generally, the United States, Canada, Australia, Europe, their birth rates are down to 2 point something in the Western world, and there's a reason for that. It's because, well, we've been poisoned, slowly poisoned. It's another story. Hopefully we can get into this in a little bit if we have time. The United States is the third fastest growing country in the world because of immigration. America will add another 100 million people by 2035 because of immigration. Now, in passing, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, and California don't have enough water for their current population. The largest user of water is agriculture, and we are depleting what's called the Ogallala Aquifer, which is a shallow water table aquifer located in the Great Plains in the United States. It should have a depth, what is the depth? It should have an average depth of 240 feet. Its average depth is 80 feet. So there are many cities and towns and farms around that don't have water. We are not going to be able to continue to produce the food that most of the world uses. We supply a lot of food for all of the world. And I know I've been talking for a long time. I feel like I have so much more to say, but I wanted to just get your guys' take on this. Nate, any comments or observations or thoughts?
Jeez. Yeah, I mean, I think in the beginning you were talking about effective.
Truth?
Yeah, effective versus, you were talking about effective versus, were you talking about effective truth or just effective truth?
E with an E, effective truth.
Right, because I don't know if there's an affective truth, but perhaps that's an opinion. But that kind of reminded me of a passage I think I'd read in the Mind of the Thought that had to do with love, affective love versus effective love. Where affective love is a transient type love, which is, I love the color of your hair or your eyes or whatever.
Right.
And effective is more of the absolute knowledge that you coexist and you co-live with all of that is, all of creation. So that's what I was kind of thinking of. And I was also thinking of the elephant in the room for a lot of people, and they just don't see it, is overpopulation. They talk about global warming, and I think people don't realize it. I when I got on the global warming trip, I was on the whole end of the oil age. No, not the global warming, but the overpopulation, the whole end of the oil age. I was thinking that, if you just look around in our modern cities, what do we have in our city that is not directly or indirectly a byproduct of oil, and if that stuff goes, then, all our food is, the chemicals, the transportation, the storage, a lot of that stuff is powered by oil, and now we're going to drain that even more, which is going to expedite the process because of the higher population, because of countries modernizing themselves and stuff, and we're gonna pay a heavy price. If we're not if the numbers, 18 million people, that's like World War, half of World War I, pretty much, every year. So I think World War II also, was a 4-year war or something like that, right? And I think it was like 56 million people died in that war, or something around that number. But if you round yours up, we're talking about 80 million people dying in the same amount of time.
Yeah.
So I really want people to, what I see in my experience is oftentimes people just don't even think about it. They have no idea why their life is so miserable. They have no idea. People sometimes they will wear their long travel as a badge of courage or something. Like I travel all the way from San Diego to Santa Monica for my daily commute. Not me, but I'm just saying people will say that, and you're just like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, no kidding.
I travel really far, but it's by choice, just to get away from the feelings I get in the overpopulated areas. That's why I live way out here adjacent to state park, basically, just to get away from it all. Sorry, I interrupted you there. I know you were on a train of thought there. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead, Nate.
Oh no, this stuff keeps on coming to me as I talk. And so getting to people, I see that seed planting really helps because a lot of them haven't really gone about digesting or even questioning their lives. They kind of like almost walk around in a stupefied or zombie state, and a lot of them lack, any imagination. They just like surrendered. Oh, this is just how things are, and you're never going to change it.
Right.
Well, I think this overpopulation. Oh, go ahead.
Oh yeah. Well, go ahead. No, it's open. I was just going to say that I think oftentimes you'll find a short in people in cities, especially. Like there's just this massive short when it comes to self-preservation or preservation of others. It's the whole idea. Like I akin it to when I'm walking out of a store and I see like a homeless person that asks me for money. If I have money, most of the time I give it.
Mm-hmm.
But if I were to see 20 homeless people,
Right.
I'd probably walk the other way. I'm like, what am I going to do? You know, I feel so disempowered with so many people, you know, and maybe that's part of our problem there too.
Oh, and they've been disconnected from nature.
Eve, you talk about the traffic in California there you have to deal with a lot. Why don't you tell people about that?
No, it's just when I go through down to my dental appointments in Mexico, but really when I came on the show, and this kind of is a segue what Nate was talking about, is this overpopulation thing has been put on the, you know, it hasn't really been, it's been abandoned for decades as far as, you know, talking about it, because they seem to think by the year the population would peak by the year 2050. But there's this new population study, and I have an article here that I have sort of summarized, and it came out in September of last year in The Guardian. It was written by Damien Carrington, and they have this new study out that shows that there is a 70% chance that the number of people on the planet will raise continuously from what they quote now as 7 billion today to 11 billion in 2010. That's just 90 years. Now, we know that from the Meyer material that it's actually over 7 billion today. Mm-hmm. But later on in the article, it was interesting. That was sort of the headline. Later on in the article, the study actually showed that the future range will go from between 9.6 billion go to between 9.6 billion and 12.3 billion. Mm. And now that this new studies come out, it's a strong argument that this overpopulation will return to the top of the international agenda. And that many of our today's children, when they grow up, they will see population 40 to 70 times higher than it is today.
Wow.
It goes on to talk about Africa is the fastest growing region, with the population rocketing from 1 billion today to between 3.5 billion and 5 billion in 2010. In countries like Nigeria, it's expected to soar from 200 billion today to 900 billion by 2000.
Not 900, you mean 900 million? 900 million?
Yeah, that's just in Nigeria.
And you keep saying 2010. Is this an old article?
No. I'm sorry. Did I say 2010?
Yes.
2100. 2100.
Yeah,
Okay,
wow. Sorry. No, that's good. The book that I've been reading, Kevin Galilee said the world, the global government, the government that really exists, their goal is by 2050 to get the population stabilized at 9 billion. But it sounds like what you're saying, some researchers are saying it's going to be much higher than that.
Much higher, like a lot higher.
Wow.
And this just kind of came out. And in the article, I'm almost done here. In the article, they stated that the other concern was the aging population, and currently seen in Europe and Japan, about the working population supporting large numbers of elderly people due to decreased births. And now, according to this study, China, India, and Brazil will have the same issue. For example, Brazil currently has 8.6 people of working age for every person over 65, but that will fall to 1.5 by 2100. So
That's a great article, Eve. Thanks for sharing that with us. And it's really interesting too that Kevin Galilee talks about in the Western world. I use that term kind of broadly. That we have been subject to certain kinds of depopulation attempts that we don't know about. We're slowly being poisoned intentionally to sterilize us. And he claims fluoride does that fluoride in our water systems, that BPA's in our plastics, and he even says chemtrails plays a role in that. I don't know what to think of all that. I think there's some truth to it. So we've got, at least in the United States and, various places in Europe, down to like a 2-point-something birth rate, 2.3, 2.4, 2.6, depending on where you're at. So, I mean, this stuff is incredibly sobering. I don't know how it feels to you.
So I'm thinking that because hopefully this area will return to the top of the international agenda as they see, what we're really dealing with, because it's really been not even talked about.
No. And what's really bad is the alternative community. I don't know if you guys have noticed this. Like, people like, and I don't mean to pick on Alex Jones because he puts out some good information, but he's so focused on pointing out the evil elite, the evil global elite, that he's kind of subverting this whole issue. And most of the alternative community, I don't know if you guys come in contact with this, they think this is disinformation. They think that if there's space on the earth, that it should be filled with people, evidently. So one of my attempts always is to relate to people that overpopulation is not a space issue.
No, because the rapid population growth is with the lack of health care, poverty, pollution, rising unrest, and crime are all problems linking to these booming populations. And in fact, it's not the number of people that's important in the population. It is what they're capable of, their level of education and their health.
Mm-hmm. Well, the other thing that comes into all of this is lifestyle. And if you want the whole world to live a lifestyle like the United States has, you're going to have a very, very low population to have us in balance with nature. Now, if we want to all live like American Indians, then, live in teepees or whatever, maybe that's a different story. I want to play a clip now. It's called Life at the End of the Empire. It's a 15-minute clip. So, unless, Nate, you had something you wanted to say real quick.
Oh, no, go ahead and fix it.
Okay, I'll put you guys on mute so you can make noises or whatever you need to do there. I will play this clip. It's an amazing movie. I'm trying to reach out to the creators now. There's like 5 or 6 people that work together on this. It's called Life at the End of the Empire. And I think it's what a lot of us are starting to sense and starting to feel right now is going on in the United States and in many parts of the world. Has kind of, I forgot, it has about 15 seconds of dead air right in the beginning. So, anyway, should start here shortly. But this wonderful book that I've been reading by Kevin Galilee called Killing Us Softly is extremely interesting here, and this clip will probably start up and interrupt me here.
The picture you're about to see deals with the problem of self-destruction. Its purpose was to enable people to better understand the nature of this strange, tragic act. We should not be able to diminish this great human affliction until more people do understand it and appreciate its seriousness.
A lot of things about the world these days are very scary.
My generation may be one of the first generations where a lot of us die not of old age, because a lot of us may not make it there.
Global warming is going to do this, and our climate's going to go weird and like another ice age or something.
I think the scariest things aren't for me. The scariest things are thinking that I might leave a world to my children that would be really difficult and painful for them.
I think we're all fucked. All of us. I think most of us in this room are going to die before we reach.
I don't believe that we would wipe ourselves out entirely. I believe that we could probably fall down.
There's got to be a way. There's got to be a way to live through it.
You know, once we're able to look at the world without blinders and see the really horrific mess we're making of it,
we have got to change our whole idea of the way that the world works.
I generally just feel like everything is out of balance.
Nothing that I can do will make any impact on the planet.
We're living a way that doesn't work. We have to live a way that does work. So it's going to change.
You can't change what's happening in Washington. You can't change what's happening over in Iraq.
We've met the enemy and he is us.
I guess I just tell myself that it's all going to be okay. You kind of have to keep going.
It's not a happy thing to think about.
There was a time in my life when I was having this recurring daydream. I'd be sitting in my car, radio blaring, slowly making my way forward through a fast food drive-thru. I'd get to the window and they'd hand me my drink and my burger and fries. And as I waited for my change, off in the distance, a bright flash and a rising cloud. And as the full force of the nuclear blast washed over me, as the icy cold of my overturned Coke seeped into my jeans, I'd think to myself, what a way to go.
Yeah, I think that we might wipe ourselves off the earth. Definitely. I feel like that's where we're headed.
There's an emptiness that other needs, the real desires aren't being met. And we're just scrambling with what our culture offers us. And our culture tells us, we will find love if we buy this lipstick and that makeup and these clothes and this car.
I think it would be okay if we gave the earth back to everybody else who is not as destructive. All the rest of the life on earth.
I was born in the American Midwest, central Michigan, the water winter wonderland. I was raised in the arms of an extended rural family, mostly farming folk, solid, hardworking, quiet, giving. I was born into warmth and plenty to eat, a sense of place and a surety of security. And I was born into stories about the value of work and the right way to live, stories about God and country, about community, loyalty, steadfastness, and resolve, stories about the role and place of humans on this planet, stories about our relationship to something we called nature. I was born into stories. Nobody told me these stories. They didn't have to. The stories were the air I breathed, the water in which I swam, the ground upon which I walked. They were all around me. We didn't even know they were stories. We just thought they were the way things are. My world was a playground. There were fish to catch, boats to row, parades to watch, trails to hike, lakes to swim, snowmobiles to ride, games to play, presents to open, and family to share it all with. The days would end with sunsets and fireworks, and sometimes I would dance until I collapsed with joy. It was a magical land, cherry popsicles and warm milk, birthday cakes and store-bought costumes and brand new chairs under the tree. A land of giant geese, well-dressed poodles, talented birds, and even more talented people. The earth was our merry-go-round, our monkey bars, our swing set. As long as we didn't look down, everything would be just fine. I was born halfway up the population explosion. I was born on the slope of rising CO2 levels. I was born in the foothills of a mass extinction. I was born on the rocky rise of oil production. I was born facing forward, looking ever upward, my first step a step upslope, a step into progress, a step into a vast and glorious human future. We were moving on up. There was no looking back. There was a mountain to conquer, and conquer it we would. All we had to do was climb a bit further. But the mountain we were climbing was not what we thought it was. Rather than rising from natural forces, the slopes up which we were headed were the results of imbalance and short-sightedness. In our efforts to progress, to succeed, to improve, to strive, to overcome, to manage, to shape, to solve, and to grow, we wielded huge new forces across the globe. We walked as giants upon the earth, unaware of the footprints we left behind. I have walked that path, unaware of my own big feet, enacting the stories of our culture, not stopping long enough to feel the instability of the slope underfoot. But in the late 80s, news of the ozone hole and global warming first hit me, and the ground began to shake. I stopped and looked around me for the first time. I got scared. I got involved. And then the shaking subsided, or rather, I just got used to it. Life got more complex with the births of my 3 children, and there was climbing still to do, so I continued to climb. But the tremors were still there underfoot. At night I slept, but fitfully, clenched with worries, my dreams assaulted by vague rumblings from the future. In my dreams I would stand at the pinnacle of the present and look out over the surrounding terrain, and it did not look like I had thought it would. A faint howling in the distance pierces the night. The monsters we have created, lumbering to rampant life, are heading, even now, toward our village. Nuclear weapons biding their time, itching with purposes unfulfilled, as hopeful fingers tremble near buttons. Bunker busters and tactical nukes, suitcase bombs and terrorist acts, power plant accidents and leaking wastes, plutonium launched into space in rockets known to explode, and depleted uranium poisoning the battlefield, depopulating the land. Chemical warheads and biological black magics, sarin and soman and VX and phosgene, anthrax and smallpox and plague, enough to take out entire cities, enough to cover the planet. and they don't care who lets them out, as long as they get to play. Other nasties lurch toward us on their own, old friends, new creations, and recent escapees. Ebola, Marburg, Lassa, and SARS, swine flu, bird flu, HIV, and AIDS. The rebound of tuberculosis, cholera, malaria, and typhus. Prions and mad cows, scrapey sheep, and chronic wasting disease. Cancers that eat away our lungs, our brains, our breast, our testicles, and our ovaries. The new monsters peer over the horizon. Good intentions spliced to blind arrogance and numbing greed. Frankenfoods and Terminator seeds. Herbicide-tolerant and pesticide-laced crops. Patented life, barely tested, quietly ticking, let loose upon the land, as if their creators, having looked at the world, managed to learn nothing at all. The monster's howls grow frenzied, chemicals in our land, our sky, our rain, our rivers, our food, our bodies, our babies. Rising male infertility rates and Superfund sites and ozone depletion. Rivers dammed and salmon doomed. Topsoil loss and fertilizer runoff. Huge oceanic dead zones and depleted fisheries. And the ghosts of silent whales scraping over the corpses of coral reefs. The monsters advance and forests collapse under their feet, leaving indigenous cultures battered, homeless, soul-sick, or dead. Disrupting water and oxygen cycles and turning soil into deserts as tigers and salmon and tree frogs and falcons stumble down the path toward extinction, their heart-rending voices lost in the chatter of chainsaws and the coughing insults of bulldozers. And all the while the climate is changing. Angry summers, insistent floods, belligerent blizzards, grudging droughts and pissed-off hurricanes, with poles warming and ice shelves calving, permafrost slumping and glaciers receding, sea levels rising and big cities sinking, as ocean currents halt and superstorms gust, deserts expand and rabbits run and locusts hoard and army ants march and mosquitoes hunt and rodents overrun. The balance undone. Leaving crops destroyed and diseases vectored and famine and rioting and looting and war. The ocean turns acid and corals and shellfish and planktons dissolve. The disruption of food chains, the collapsing of ecosystems, tonight on the Weather Channel. Watch it now while you can, because oil is peaking with no clear replacements. Production will falter as demand keeps increasing, and the price, which is rising now, will just keep on rising. Imagine the impact of the global economy, to the truckers and farmers, to your neighbors, yourself. Watch the bidding war rage from trade floors to battlefields. Watch the Pentagon plan.
Wow, what a clip. That clip is amazing. The movie is called What a Way to Go, Life at the End of the Empire. So Google that or look that up on YouTube. Guys, we've got about 5 minutes left. If you have time tomorrow, I'd like to pick back up with our discussion. Nate, what did you think of that clip? That was a 15-minute clip from the movie called What a Way to Go, Life at the End of the Empire.
It reminds me of something I've read before.
You're breaking up, Nate. Nate.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, it's much better. Try it again.
All right. Yeah, it reminds me of some of the Meyer material that I've read. How Meyer was talking about, we're going to see, here's how the ice age is going to happen. You're going to go out, you're going to get a snow shovel and shovel off your driveway or wherever or your walkway, then you're going to go out the next day and then do it again, and then the next day and do it again, and then the next day you're just not going to do it anymore. It's going to be like,
this is my life, mate. This is what's happening right now. Right now. It's incredible. Eve, what do you think?
Yeah, it's starting to happen. Unfortunately, it's going to get a little more uglier before people... Everybody says everybody's waking up. Well, maybe so, but they're not waking up far enough.
It's very disturbing with multiple things on multiple fronts occurring. Nate just talked about the Ice Age. And even though I'm studying the Maya material continually, I still feel like I don't know enough about this Ice Age. And it's already upon us. I mean, quite literally, what is coming back from my subconscious is this is a change in climate. This is not just a bad winter or two. Nate, what do you think?
Yeah, and I think it happens a lot quicker than what scientists have, said in the past. Also, when they were talking about the rekindling of diseases and stuff, the rebirth of a lot of these diseases that have been extinct.
Right.
And this has caused me a lot of concern because these creatures that run these corporations are only in it about propaganda, and now it's like, hey, we're going to get your child vaccinated against everything, and I don't want them pumping crap in my kid, let alone me,
Right.
And they're going to use it as a spin. They're going to be like, and they're going to say, oh, it's not because of overpopulation or because lack of infrastructure or because, people living too closely in conjunction with animals or anything like that. It's going to be because you haven't vaccinated your kid, and therefore they have allowed these certain diseases to thrive and live. And I just think that's just BS. So.
Disturbing. It's shocking. We've got about 2 minutes left on the stream. Any closing thoughts, Eve?
Oh, gosh. Well, considering all we're facing in this world today, it can be very discouraging.
Indeed.
And frightening. So what I am doing is just concentrating on learning more and putting the truth into my storage banks so it will be retrieved in future lives. That's the only thing I can hold on to at this point, unless I start seeing something turning around to kind of hold it together for me.
That is a very interesting perspective, Eve. Putting truth in your storage banks, growing your material consciousness with wisdom for your future life.
Yeah, so I can be ready to bring the world around to how it's supposed to be, how we are supposed to exist. Yeah.
Very, very wonderfully said. Thank you so much, Eve. Thank you so much, Nate, for coming on. You've been listening to Ohio Exopolitics. I'm your host, Mark Snyder, and we will be back tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern on freedomslips.com, and hopefully be back tomorrow with another episode of the Meyer Material. Talk to you soon.